My October schedule is wild, by the way.
It's working.
I'm probably going to miss the next 3 meetings, I think.
Well, I guess we're school committee today.
Got a lot of trips booked between December and January and February.
Well, we'll take,
It'll be
But a lot.
yeah, we'll take turns. I'll be gone in October.
See the Citizen today?
Right in the middle.
I did.
This one.
That was a surprise,
There we go.
although I watched that school committee meeting where it all came to light, so I guess I'm not too shocked.
So, I'm
It's not a good
keeping
omen.
my distance on that one. I don't-
It's not a good omen for somebody, I just don't know who. That looks like a Zoom box. Progress.
Yeah, let's not sign in this.
No, this one.
Sign in a different account.
Okay, correct.
That's Cliff. We definitely want
For anybody have Zoom login there?
Oh, yeah. It should be on the.
Sign in email.
Maybe it's under the different account?
Yeah, sign into a different account. Yeah.
There's the one here, better for Zoom.
That looks good.
That looks good.
It's better clip.
That's what, wow.
Is this our version of anything?
That's what allows us the roads for all. Better work.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. Alright, so what should we do?
There we go. Start.
This one, right?
Wow,
Yeah.
good to you, man.
Right.
Raise your ass.
It's all working as it should so far.
Nice job.
Should I click a join or that's it?
I think you have to hit join. I will let you on.
Recording in progress.
There we
We just gotta
go.
make sure to stop the recording. Well done.
In progress, I guess, but then you
So are we all set?
I think we are.
Our apologies to people online. We had a little technical difficulty, so we're a few minutes behind schedule. I'd like to call this meeting of the Bedford, Massachusetts Town Finance Committee to order at 7:09 PM on September 25th, 25.
Alan, did I hit the participant? Is that Karen? Or this participant, hit the participant button. See if there's somebody on there.
I think the one is just
Probably
us.
right? All right, good. All right, nice.
Okay. First order of business is public comment, and I'm going to assume that there is no one to comment unless Paul has a comment for us. So we jump right over to new model discussion. What I wanted to do tonight was Paul has come out with more information on this model. I want to make sure that we get people understand what's there and we get all the things we want in it. We've been wanting this for a while. We were kind of really looking forward for things, so that's why it's the star of the show for this evening. Mr. Finance Director.
Sure, you probably didn't have too much time to take a look at it today. Got it on the Dropbox later on this afternoon, but similar to the model that we had brought to you the last time, and what I tried to do is customize it a little bit closer to some of the items that Bedford uses in its budgeting process. For example, the other one didn't have CPA. You know, we had to develop a list of non-discretionary accounts, things of that nature. I know you had mentioned at your last meeting that you break out separately the planning, Board of Health, and
Library.
library separately, so we broke those items out as well. But aside from that, you know, the top sheet pretty much pulls down from the detail at the bottom, on the bottom lines of the spreadsheet. And like I say, I'm happy to walk through or answer any questions that anyone may have on this. But for fiscal '27 projection, we didn't really spend a lot of time drilling down on those numbers, but what I tried to do was sort of replicate what it would look like if we had similar percentages on expenditures and similar percentages on revenues that we had in fiscal '26. So you'll notice the fiscal '26 column, current fiscal year, we're balanced to zero, which is where we're supposed to be at this point in the season, since we're, in a couple months, we'll be setting the tax rate. And we'll be required to have a balanced budget at that point for the state, so.
I like what I see. It's comprehensible at a big picture as well as detail level, which I really am fond of. And I'm sure someone else will pipe up and say, and it has projections out a few years, and we have room for history.
I did took a look at the one on the Dropbox. There are a lot of columns hidden there, right?
Yeah, I had to hide a lot of them.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
Goes
But
back
in-
to
in-
2004.
Okay, the history.
Yeah, but not this town, though.
Not this time, that's the other time.
Don't pay too much attention
Okay.
to those older numbers. There's also some tabs on the online spreadsheet of sort of trend data that I'll be adding to. Those are information that I find useful about the town over time to sort of analyze things. And as I come across things, I'll continue to populate that and sort of fill it out with some other
Yeah.
sheets with trend data on it.
So today the purpose really try to understand the column and rows rather than talk about the numbers.
What's that?
But today the purpose really try to understand the spreadsheet, how it is structured, rather than discuss such particular numbers
Yeah.
on the sheet.
We can do whatever you'd like to do at the moment, because you're the only one who has something they want to talk about. I'm still digesting pieces of it.
Now real quick, as I'm digesting, sorry to interrupt, but are the numbers for '26,
Those are all valid numbers.
those are all valid for what we approved at
Everything
town
that's been
meeting?
approved to date, yes.
And then '27 is just a guess, kind of based on like similar sort, like the
Well, you can
the
see
levy budget percent, that's not percent growth, that's percent of the total levy?
That's percentage increase.
Percentage
on the
increase.
total tax levy.
Got it. So it's not percentage year over year of,
Increase, Prop 2.5 increase, how much we're spending.
Got it.
On the tax levy on that revenue source.
got it.
So historically, it seems as though the town's been more inclined to raise the tax levy probably between 4% and 5%, but the last couple of years, it's been closer to 8%. So,
You've been burning through unused tax levy. That's where it went.
and just to point out a couple of things, I don't want you to focus too much on '27, because I know it's not your intention to have a budget year like last year, or the current year next year. But like I say, I tried to replicate it based upon what revenues went up last year, what expenditures went up. And you can see it sort of puts us in a spot where with another 8% levy increase, we still need to cut about 800 grand to balance at that point. And, we'll have $48,000 worth of levy capacity remaining. So we'll pretty much eat it up if we have a similar year to what we had for the current fiscal year. And again, based upon, there's barely any numbers in there that are drilled down on. I think I added a number in for Middlesex Retirement. They usually give us a 2-year look at what their number's gonna be. And, I don't expect the payment in lieu of taxes revenue to go up. It's usually pretty stable, so I threw a 0% on that one instead of the 2, but
There's actually a formula for it. We worked out a deal with the MITRE Corporation, and there's a percentage growth on it, which I'm sure somewhere deep in your archives is the paperwork on
yeah,
that.
I'll look for that. But like I say, there wasn't a lot of thought put into what the numbers for 20 would be, other than I just tried to replicate sort of what happened in 26, just to sort of see where that would put us.
I think the fact that we're diving after the numbers already is a very good endorsement of how easy it is to read this. Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
to sort of, if you want to talk a little bit, like I say, the top sheet is generally, it's sort of like the summary information, and it all pulls from the information below and sort of follows that format, revenues, then into expenditures, and there's really a lot of effort put in to try to segregate recurring revenues and expenditures from non-recurring revenues and expenditures. I am aware that at town meeting for 27, that we will have warrant articles other than the operating budget, but I think the assumption there is that they'll have an associated revenue source. So as you add them in, whether it's the capital plan, whether it's the CPA, they sort of fill in on that non-recurring revenues and non-recurring expenditures sections. But they're usually offset. So they're almost like net zero to the operating budget, which we try to segregate so that we can, make sure that we are, all our non-recurring, our recurring revenues are always matching up with our recurring expenditures, which is a goal. It doesn't prohibit us from using a non-recurring revenue to offset the budget, and it likewise doesn't prohibit us from using the raise and appropriate function to fund a warrant article, but we want to be able to real cognizant of that as we move forward, just because we want to have that budget in balance with what we typically expect to get as revenue and what we typically expect to spend on an annual basis. I'm not suggesting it's good practice, but if we had a really bad year, we could not do capital. You don't want to do that many years in a row, but if we had to fund the government without buying any new trucks or anything like that, we could if we had to.
Sorry, Paul, what's the 8.8%, I'm just looking at the 2016 column, 8.8 at the very top, so that's the levy from the previous year.
Yep, that's the growth in the levy from the previous
Growth in levy.
fiscal year, the tax levy, total growth.
And what's the 4.83 below that?
That's pretty much the sum total of the operating budgets.
Sum total.
I'll have to check that formula, but to make sure that it encompasses the,
This is
ultimately, we would want that to be the guideline number,
levy growth versus budget growth, right?
more or less, yes.
Somebody was asking for something, what was it? Oh, I know what it was, and it isn't jumping out at me, so I'm not staring at it correctly. Discretionary versus non-discretionary.
Yep, so there's the non-discretionary accounts you can find on page 3.
You've had more time with this than I have.
Yeah, 20 years. So page 3 would be those accounts in discussion with Matt and Amy that we typically sort of hold outside the budget guidelines because they're considered to be, whether they're assessments or accounts that we have very little control over.
You were asking for that, weren't you, Phil, or am I mistaken?
Yeah.
Again,
Exactly.
it's not a final list, there's a subject to debate there, but that's what I came up with in discussion with Matt and Amy.
Yeah, I'm going to play the newbie here. Like for health insurance, Middlesex and retirement system, those one actually for both, for the town employee and the school employees, is that right?
Yes, town, school employees, and also retirees.
A retiree too.
Yep.
Sorry, what's considered general government?
Pardon me?
General government, what's that? What's covered under that?
That's a town.
Everything except for, on the general government side of things, everything except for the library planning department and the Board of Health, which is
Library, planning, Board of Health.
broken out separately.
Dominated.
Essentially, I guess it would be any of the departments that report to the town manager.
And that includes salaries.
Pardon me?
That includes salaries
It's
and everything,
Everything,
yeah.
the entire budget. So if you were to add up those numbers, you would get the total appropriated
Right.
budget from the budget article, essentially. We did make some minor modifications there in my discussions with Matt. I know that the town has done the audit as a separate warrant article. We figured we would throw that in the mix in a non-discretionary, added into the operating budget. The other thing that had been done as a warrant article was the town manager's merit article where he supplements employees' pay. We really should consider that part of the general government number going forward, just to get a full picture
Yeah.
of it. So for the basis of this presentation, those two numbers are included in here, despite the fact that they were operating, separate warrant articles last year on the town meeting warrant.
Just for proper assessment of blame if necessary, I will admit that my discussions with Paul and Matt, I have been very supportive of making changes that weren't necessarily what you would see in the history, but make things easier for us and more efficient for us and simpler for us to come up with accurate budgets quickly.
Can you explain, sorry, I might be missing it, why is the levy growth higher than the budget growth? What am I,
Because there's
just
lots more we get than taxes.
Say that again?
the levy growth versus the budget
What
growth?
are the,
There's other sources of revenue besides taxes. Budget can grow bigger than levy.
no,
Yeah, if you follow it through, on the top page here, if you were at your desk fooling around with your, it would be evident to you. Basically, just to put it in simplest terms, the tax levy is almost like the plug at the end, what it takes to fill the gap between revenues and expenses that the town has voted.
so to make sure I'm clear, so if the budget growth, we choose to increase the budget growth larger, and technically the percent of tax levy growth should come down?
If we limit the budget growth, the tax levy increase should come down.
No, yeah.
There's some items in here that don't go to town meeting that get added in, that are part of that get covered by the tax levy. That would be the assessor's overlay account, which is on here for $850,000 on 2027. That's not required to have a town meeting appropriation. They just get to tell us what they want or what they need. This cherry sheet, the charges from the state you'll see on there. Town meeting doesn't get to appropriate those, they just take them, so they're part of the equation. So there's $1.3 million in expenditures that, weren't contemplated at the time of town meeting.
So basically, because the levy grew more than the budget, if I'm understanding this correct, it's basically that we got more other revenues, like from the state and so forth,
Yeah,
than,
local receipts.
Percentage is higher, but the actual dollars is lower. Levy's
Or, but
smaller than
wait.
budget.
So
it'd be the other way, the levy's smaller, so
Levy's smaller
it
than
means
budget.
that we got less from the state and other revenue sources, so we had to grow our town's levy versus faster than,
yeah, I think if you
budget
look at the blue
because other
column,
things are
if you look
cutting
at the
back.
blue column up top, we have $131 million worth of revenues and $131 million of expenditures. And the categories of revenues are above also, so the state aid portion and the local receipts portion that help fund the budget are going up around 2%. So there's a 3% shortfall compared to the 4.75 down below.
Got it.
That the expenditures are going up. But a bunch of combination items like that.
right. So we had to use the levy more than, because we had less coming in from other sources, so, got it, okay.
Yep.
Year over year.
That was the drain on the unused tax levy.
So based on this approach, it seems like for existing properties, it's not new build. Seems that every year we always take like 2.5% increase given.
Well, that's, the formula works, and that's also in here down below how we calculate the tax levy limit.
Yeah,
Proposition 2.5 allows the total tax levy to go up 2.5%.
right.
But we also are able to add in new tax growth into that, which is what you'll
New-
see under a line called new growth.
New housing, right? That's like a new,
It could be a deck on somebody's house, it could be a new house, it could be,
Addition will
it could be
consider new.
it could be a new office, it could be a new office building, and everything in between.
The value of the house goes up, we can increase the taxes on
on the growth of the value of the house.
it. Yep. If you put a second floor in your house
Yeah.
is now worth more. That's new growth.
Yeah.
That goes into the tax base.
How about the house? There's no renovation at all, just like the next year, the value increase.
Yeah, so
Not-
that doesn't get
not
encompassed
market
in
value.
new growth, but I think, what you see, you know, your tax bill is a function of your value times the rate.
Right.
So, when values go up, your rate typically goes down
Goes
because
down.
we're bumping up against, those
Right.
two together contribute to
Right.
the tax levy overall,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I just, we are curious, like which, what part falls on the spreadsheet, like line 50 versus the 52, basically, right? There's 2% limit against the previous.
All right, let me just hit down to that.
Oh, yeah, on your printout, don't have the row number,
New
unfortunately.
Yeah, I
growth is new houses.
I didn't print the row numbers, but
Yeah.
I think you're referring to the tax levy portion here
Right,
on
right.
top of page 2.
Yeah, new growth.
So our starting point for the levy limit is what the ending levy limit was for the previous year. You can see that we 96,346,112 was the ending levy limit
Right, last year, this
in
year.
this current fiscal year.
Yeah.
What they allow us to do is add on to
Oh.
that the excluded debt that the town has, that the town voted to exclude from Prop 2.5.
Mhm.
That gives us the total tax levy limit. And then the following year, we have to start by adding the 2.5% onto that 96, because otherwise we'd be adding the 2.5 onto the debt exclusion.
Right.
And the way that that works in here is that we have that exact amount of debt is in the debt budget. So it's a net zero to the budget when you exclude the debt. It's included on the revenue side and the expense side. So we start off 2027 with the levy limit from the previous year. As you can see, we multiply that by 2.5%. We have an estimate in here for new growth. That's something like I kind of feel like we're going to have to ramp that down.
Well, that's just given to us by the assessors, is what I was always told. It was-
Yep, the assessors
We can't change it.
are in the process of calculating that,
Right.
but as a budgeting tool, we like to be conservative with
Oh, no,
that.
I agree, it's my understanding that the assessor's number is the number whether we like it or not.
It is, and it gets
Right.
approved by the state. Town's had some pretty good growth the past few years,
Yeah.
but I'd be surprised if that were to continue, given the current,
That's supposed for the residential and the commercial, right?
both.
That's total
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah.
commercial, industrial, residential.
Yeah, so as a department, they will decide how to distribute the increase.
Yeah, there's a tab, one of the informational trend tabs
Oh.
goes into new growth and
It is.
sort of
yeah.
what the composition of that has been, commercial versus residential over the
Okay.
past several years.
Okay,
Uh,
That's cool.
You know, commercial sector's struggling a little.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that. And again, we've had, you know, I think the new growth for fiscal 2025 was about 2.4 million, which is it's a really good number, to be honest. And I wouldn't expect that to continue as we move forward.
So I
But
know
that number is a straight-up estimate, though. Even the 2026 number is an estimate because they're working on the current growth as we speak.
So I know I've asked this a couple times, but I really want to make sure that the work to you is mostly building this model. Once the model's built, it's roughly a push-button job to keep populating it, because you have a phenomenal amount
It's
of
constantly in
information here.
flux, you know, so just something to keep in mind as we'll be meeting on this is, you know, the 2026 column will change too, because we're still in 2026. So if we take some action at November town meeting, 2026 column's gonna change. Percentages forward to 2027 will change as well.
I've been flying the banner of, don't kill the new finance director with too much work, that's ridiculous.
Well, like I say, this is something we'll be updating every time we get a new piece of information or we get a budget for 27 finalized. Like I say, what I think the committee would hope to see is, you know, your guideline percentage really highlighted. You know, if you look on page 3, general government, public library, board of health, planning and education, you know, that percentage should equal your guideline there, if we run this thing properly.
That would be my fondest hope.
We'll be able to demonstrate, you know, that we met the guideline.
And so, do you keep this file online as a single source? Or is like every meeting you generate a new version to put in the box?
Every meeting, I would generate a new one to put in your box.
Would you be able to do the favor of like, if something changed, maybe just make that cell a different color? So we know what was the difference
Yeah.
in this one?
I don't know, I thought about that. It's, it can be a challenge with a lot of moving pieces, to track changes like that.
Well, I guess I was just like, if you changed, if you're gonna have new sheets every time, if you go in there, you're gonna, you know, make a number change and drop it in a Dropbox. You know, simple color the cell with that.
Yeah, we'll see, I guess, when we go to do the first
Otherwise, there's so
one.
many numbers, like then we'd be asking everybody, oh, what's changed, you know, versus, oh, I know what changed, because the color's red or something. Yeah.
I'll consider it.
All right.
Like I say, I have to sort of work through that.
Sure.
Like I say, this thing,
I mean,
you know,
this is
gets updated on a whim, you know, somebody's, you know, Matt walks by the office
Oh,
and say, hey, I heard from so-and-so. You know,
I see, and then you change it on the
run
fly.
in and do it quick, so, but I will try to consider a way to sort of track the major changes.
Sure.
I think it's just week over week. It's not, I don't think we need it like tracked over a longer period.
Oh,
than
yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
kind of all I think.
If
I'm
we're not
hearing you
careful,
say.
it's
Yeah.
looking like a pinball machine if you change one number, and that's just gonna make my eyes fall out. Let's keep pushing on this, because this is what we said we wanted, we've got it.
Yeah, no, so far it's
That's
good.
good.
I think we keep pushing on it, and then, because my fondest hope is that we get the model where we want it. And as Paul said, maybe there's some small changes here and there, but fundamentally, it's pretty much what we want. So at least we can start talking, and eventually we'll start talking in shorthand about, we changed blah, 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 and everyone knows where that is, but if you've not seen this before, you're spending some time looking for which line it was, but I like the top sheet quite a bit.
I like the underlying sheets too, where you're adding historical new growth, historical revenues, et cetera. I think that's nice. As you add that, just have the history.
I mean,
there.
that's just useful information for all of us,
Sure.
just to sort of understand sort of how those things are trending over time.
So right now that shows a deficit of 818K, just because there's a lot of cells being empty, right, over there.
For fiscal '27?
Yeah.
Yeah, if, like I say, if, you know, if we roughly did what we did last year, we would be raising the levy 8%, and we'd be in the hole about 800 grand.
Yeah.
But again, that's just making crazy assumptions that, you know, next year is gonna be like the current year. Like I
And it
said,
looks like you haven't populated free cash or
Yeah.
community preservation or those.
Special
yeah.
wallet.
Yeah, and I feel the reason I didn't do that is because, like I say, if things go well, those items should be net zero to the spreadsheet, and this is really the overall
Oh.
recurring spending plan.
So you see non-recurrent expenditure and the revenue should also cancel each other, balance.
They completely cancel each other out in most cases. Like, you know, most of the capital budget is funded through free cash. We
I
do it
see
a
what
little
you're
fund.
saying.
So, you know, that'll get added in.
But then it'll get taken out.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
non-recurring expenditures, special articles, March town meeting, we populate that line. And then further down, you got, you know, one-time receipts, March town meeting, free cash, so.
Right, I see what you, we had it in the last model where it like added and then it removed, and that makes sense, because it's not part of the recurring, yeah, that makes sense.
That's nice.
But again, it doesn't prohibit you from deviating from that and allocating some
Yeah.
free cash towards the recurring part, or,
Yeah.
you know, making an expenditure comes in the capital article portion from raise and appropriate, theoretically, the tax levy, so.
No, it completely makes sense, and that's why you just keep it at 0 for now. Because I think our assumption is historically that we wouldn't use those for.
In most cases, from what I've reviewed over the past couple of years, the majority of articles have had associated funding source that was not, you know, sort of the raise and appropriate tax levy function.
So am I jumping ahead here? But so eventually from this committee, what we try to come up with the guideline is really for these 5 rows on the third page, like general government, public library, board of health, planning and education.
That's the five,
Yes.
that's the
That's the 5?
That's
Yes.
the 5 independently voted committees in the town.
And it's assumed that the non-discretionary portion of the budget, which is the line above that,
Yeah.
is sort of difficult to manage. So sometimes, you know, when the state tells us what health insurance is going up, there's not a lot of room for argument there. There's not a lot of opportunity to change the agreements with employees in terms of, you know, cost share and things of that. So those are typically increases that we have to somehow absorb within the budget.
Which means those other number or percentages go down.
Yes,
Yeah.
typically.
Yeah, you put in a lot of 10% budget, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what 2026 was. So again,
Yeah.
I didn't spend a lot of time
Yeah.
on it other than to say, all right, well, what happened last year? Well, let me plug that percentage in.
I remember Dave coming in for the medical insurance, medical insurance, saying it was bad news.
It's almost always bad news on health insurance, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What's the cherry sheet?
Cherry sheet is just a really old-fashioned term for state funding.
Oh, okay.
So the state has a cherry sheet. In the old days, it would be delivered on bright red paper.
Yeah.
And along with the cherry sheet, they also provide us a bill. You can see that under the
Data assessment.
state assessments area.
Yeah.
You know, we pay for the MBTA and a couple other smaller items there.
So you said there's a state funding, as in like revenue or expenditures?
Both. So they give us money and then they take it away.
Take it away.
Okay.
So there's a revenue portion under cherry sheet.
Yeah, I see
Those
that.
are the revenues we get from the state. Chapter 70 is the big one for education. And then there's a couple other categories here, about $10 million in total. And they take the $500,000 that they charge us pretty much off the top of our payments, so. That would be on page 3 at the bottom. Biggest one being the MBTA, our portion of paying for the MBTA.
Okay, sorry, so the ones on the cherry sheet, ones on the page 2, those ones we pay expenditures.
I'm sorry.
The cherry sheet line items on page 2,
Yep,
those are the ones that are expenditures.
Those are revenues.
these are revenues.
These are revenues, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 categories on page 2, the 3 categories of revenues that the town has. You got the tax levy, local receipts, and, you know, I could change cherry sheet to state aid. And that may make the spreadsheet a little bit more. Red paper is something they haven't used in a long time to send this information out, so.
Gotcha, okay. I see outside items.
I know like let's still go back to the non-discretionary like accounts. Those increase are huge, right? I know in short term it's very hard to change because, you know,
Yep.
insurance.
You can, but insurance is a whopper and they're
Right.
really expensive.
But in the long run, because, you know, insurance is per person, right? So you still should, you know, kind of manage your head account or whatever, should be able to kind of manage it, right? Is those ones that like a really, I know it's probably town manager's responsibility, right? To either
Yeah,
this committee
so the town participates in what's called the Group Insurance Commission, which
Right.
is essentially a state pool of health insurance.
right,
You know, they try to make modifications on an annual basis
Right.
to like the plan design, et cetera. But the individual negotiations on that are out of the town's hands once you're a member of that plan.
right,
So they provide the plans, we're a member of the GIC, and if they say that the plans are going up 8% or 9%, then, you know, there's no individual room for bargaining from that point on.
That sounds a little bit bad, but actually GIC saved us a phenomenal amount of money when we switched over to it.
Yes, it was the lower cost option
Yeah.
for many years.
But
and-
still, year over year, that you will see this increase, right? Like,
Yeah,
percent increase.
like I say, it's
Um,
considered pretty quality plans, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's intended to be cost effective by pooling all the state employees with many different municipalities'
Yeah.
employees, and hopefully get some economies of scale with that.
So those are basically non-negotiable. There's no way for this community to say, oh, this one cannot be 10%, it can only be 5%.
I don't know if we can, in theory, get up.
Yeah,
to
you can
GIC.
argue it all you want. I'm not sure if it would change the result.
But our only option is to get out of GIC if that's even possible, and the rates would really go up.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a bad idea.
It would be pretty risky maneuver.
I remember when we were switching over, I remember the numbers involved and the different options, and it was eye-popping.
It's like I say, health insurance has been a budget buster for local government for many years now. You know, Middlesex retirement system, that's an assessment. There's really no bargaining with that one. You know, the town's insurance, town and school insurance policies, based upon our loss histories.
I
We
guess
do have a limited ability there to shop around,
Right.
but there aren't too many carriers out there that offer the full range that a local government may need for coverages. So
Yeah.
if you went down those items, those are typically sort of held outside of it. And yeah, I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but yes.
Yeah.
The water and sewer assessments
Yeah.
come from the state. That's, you know, how much we're paying to buy water from Lexington and dispose of the sewer. MWRA just sends us a bill, and that's the bill. So based upon our flows, obviously, but
It's better than that used to be too. We used to pay full consumer rates out of Lexington until we ended up paying the MBTA provider rates.
Oh.
That cost a lot of money. Well, silence has descended. Does that mean for now we're out of questions? Anybody got anything else they want to go after?
like I say, I'm happy to spend as much time as anybody needs to one-on-one, or if you want to go sit down and go through some of this, and just let me know.
Yeah, this one, yeah. But certainly, for me, it's there no contrast between the previous version and this version. Where I only look at the style.
This is much better.
Much better. It seems like it's kind of easy to follow. Yeah. Like this one, certainly that I remember the last version have a lot of details per department under the town. Like there's a lot of sections under that, right? Yeah.
And
Look at
that's
it.
not lost. We
Yeah, that'll still be coming.
We could see that in the spring if we want to.
Uh-huh.
We may want to, but it's not lost. It's just not in this top line thing, which, and the guideline memo was a top line budget.
Uh-huh.
So there'll be a supporting spreadsheet with all the town departments
How does that
on it, and
break up?
sort of
Okay.
how they have fared from the previous year.
Yeah.
And it'll sort of roll up into the general government line. Schools will have their roll up. I'm not sure how they present their budgets to you, but, you know, within the general government, there'll be a breakdown of all the different departments and sort of what the percentage changes were, you know, some details about their budgets, et cetera. So you'll still have that opportunity to drill down on a department by department basis, you know, later on in the fiscal year.
High level, what the schools have been doing recently, I don't know if they're gonna continue it, because last year this calendar got tight, was they came and gave us a preview in October, November. And then they came and presented their budget like everybody else in January, February. And we got a lot of details out of them, a lot of information, but we actually have little to say to them other than the total amount,
Correct.
which makes it a little tough. But they used to come and give us a preview, which was kind of nice, because you could see what was coming. It wasn't their final approach, but it was what they were thinking. Did I do that accurately?
So you get a crack at all of those in January, February, individually.
I think what this says is we're going to have some challenging discussions in the winter.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a whopper.
Especially when you look at non-discretionary growing, if you follow just general kind of estimates based on past at 7.51%.
But that's why I'm pushing a little bit for us to get this as a usable tool for us that we're good at, because we're gonna really need it this year. Anybody have any more questions?
You have $1 million in there for allowance for abatement overlay.
Yeah.
That's just a guess right now, or is that like, or do
I
you
feel,
guys
I've
think
been
it's gonna
speaking with the
actually-
new assessor, and they're a little thin in that department.
So they're gonna need more this
Yeah,
year.
I would say that they're gonna need to start ramping up that. I think it's historically been closer to they've been raising about 650. I think we have about $600,000 on the books, and that's not a good place to be in a community where we have some pretty large commercial properties. One abatement case could sock up a lot of that, so.
Okay.
Want to wrap this up for tonight? And everybody has homework, and the homework is keep digging on this to make sure that it turns out to be the tool that will help you the most.
No, thank you. This is really great. And thanks for
like I say,
continuing to help populate it. I think that's going to be the piece that's helpful for us. And
Yep.
Like I say, I'm happy to sit with anybody, go into it in depth, and try to work out a way to track the changes in a way that'll be useful to you.
Ready to move on to the next thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Have
So-
a good night.
This is really, really easy. This is, every time we change fiscal policy, we go to the select board and say, this is what we're doing. Do you agree? Will you sign on to this? And that's what I'm doing Monday night at the select board meeting. So I'm giving them the new fiscal policy that we voted for at our last meeting and was unanimously approved. And I also have, which you'll find a little thing called free cash, because one of the pieces of pushback I got was, well, what's the free cash number been for the last bunch of years? And as you can see, it's been mostly 50%, plus or minus. And then it started to come up, and then last year it came back down. But I just wanted to see and feel comfortable that we weren't taking it from 75% down to 50%. So that's what's going on Monday night. You're more than welcome to come and listen to it at the select board meeting if you are so interested. Well, that's always true. You can always come to select board meetings. I don't know if they're going to get actively involved with what they see, or if they're just going to say, gee, this looks great. In the past, it's been, this looks great. Where do we sign? But when you ask someone their opinion, you always have to allow for the fact that they'll have one.
So notice the language is around 50%. So it could be above, could be low, right?
I
Is it?
can only speak for myself. I'm not comfortable with finances that are guidelines to 3 decimal places of accuracy.
No, I'm saying is like it could be another option could be like less than 50%, around.
We set around so you can wiggle up and down.
I know, like
I think if we can use less, we'd always like to use less.
Yeah.
But I think
Remember, this comes into us as a budget request.
I think it's going to be unlikely that it's going to be like a 20% utilization of free cash. I think they'll find there's plenty of good things that the town
yeah. So
needs.
yeah, just a question like right now in the spreadsheet like for 2024 is right now 55%. I think that's close enough.
I agree. That's why it's worded the way it is.
Okay.
And here's the kicker, which these guys have heard me say a million times, but you haven't heard it yet, is if we're wrong, we can change it. It's a financial policy from this committee as to how we want to operate the budget.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it would be wise to change it too quickly or change it too much, like next year it's 97%. But if it's wrong, we can change it. We're not cast into concrete shoes on this. So if you're okay with this, I will present it to the select board Monday night and see if I can get them to agree to follow us down this path.
Yeah, I'm supportive.
And if you're curious, these numbers in the free cash thing all came from the state DLS site. I didn't get them from I didn't calculate them from our spreadsheets. I just went right to the state site.
Just make sure I'm clear again, so the certified is always 1 year after the use, correct?
It's actually 2 years,
2 years.
because there's the year it was and there's the year we're in, and we're working on the year we're not in yet. So we're working on 27's budget now.
So if I'm looking at the
Living in
table,
26
if I'm looking at a
budget.
table here, let's just pick an example. The first column used in 2017, $4 million. The certified was for
Certified was
2020?
for that 7 million one.
7 million.
The
Well,
certified.
let me pick a different date. That one's,
You just use the last row.
let's pick the last row. So last year we used 8.8 million.
Right, but that 55% is 8.8 and divided by 15.8.
15 points, that's the previous year.
Yes.
Previous year
For
certified.
this it is.
Yes, for this.
And I will say, I don't understand what DLS is doing, but I follow what they put for information religiously and slavishly.
Uh-huh. So, okay.
I agree, it's confusing,
Yeah.
because
Because I'm
Like I said,
a little surprised that our 2025 certified number is that high. I always thought we said it was going down. See what I mean?
this goes back further than it seems. That's, last year we were at 22 million certified out of 24.
Yeah. That's what's 22 year, right? 2025.
Oh, sorry. When you said 22, I thought you meant 2022.
No.
Yes,
So last year we were certified for 2022, correct?
last year, the most recent certification, which was for the 24 budget, was 22.
22. And we don't have it for 25.
We don't,
Obviously not thing for 26 yet.
well, 25 will come in a month or two,
Okay.
because we're in 26 and we're
Yeah.
making 27.
Yeah.
So in building up 27, the only information we have is what was going on in 25,
Yeah.
certified number.
Yeah.
And that will come in, thinking about last year, when was it, Phil? January, December, something like that?
I don't remember.
It came in late in the year. And but it's still early enough for us to build our budgets on that number.
Yeah.
That's why we use that stilted phrasing of using the last certified value from the state, the Commonwealth.
Dave had estimates early, but yeah, I think it was certified late.
I just remember the 22, because that's when we told Amy she had to cut it in half. And I felt awful having to say that so late in the process, but we were spending an awful lot of our free cash. Anyhow, if you're okay with this, I'll
Yep.
present it to the select board, and I'll bring back any comments they have on it. Hopefully they'll take it well. Sometimes they like to help. Minutes, September 11th, 2025 minutes. Anybody want to make a motion or make corrections?
I move that we approve the September 11th, 2025 minutes as in the Dropbox.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Minutes are approved, 500. Meetings attended. Anyone been to anything?
No.
I think the last select board meeting was, the select boards are every other week, so I'll be going to one this week, but I wasn't at one last week, so. Well, that brings us to time to go.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Well, thank you guys, appreciate it.
We have to do the end.
Making progress here.
I am delighted with the state that this is in. It's what we've been asking for.
And stop button will there. Okay.
Yeah, we need to do this